Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Christian, founder and CEO of Cornerstone, and welcome to Behind the Barricade. So here's what we're doing with this podcast. We're sitting down with the people who are actually in the trenches of construction every single day and asking them a simple question. When a project works, well, why? And when it doesn't, what broke? Because here's the thing. Productivity in our industry has stayed flat for decades. And we also wanted to find the people who were figuring it out. Today's guest is Meri Gregg. Meri is a senior project manager at Avon Design Group out of Pittsburgh, and she has over 21 years of experience in the business, and the vast majority of it in retail. She's managed rollouts. She's coordinated across all project partners, owners, general contractors, landlords, building departments, all of it. And she does it with a level of process discipline that I think you're really going to appreciate. And here's what jumped out to me in this conversation. Meri talks about two specific forms she developed that completely changed how she and her team launch a project. Simple tools, but the way she uses them to get ahead of problems before leases are even signed. That's where the gold is. She also gets really candid about one of her biggest pet peeves in construction. And if you've ever walked onto a job site and found the GC building off the wrong set of drawings, you're going to feel this one. And there's a moment where she shares something one of her mentors told her years ago about not forcing your team to work the way you do. It's a small comment, but it stuck with me long after the conversation was recorded. Lots of practical takeaways in this one. Let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Meri Gregg.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Christian, CEO and founder of Cornerstone, and this is Behind the Barricade, where we really try to unpack performance breakthroughs in construction. And I'm so excited to have you listening today, but I'm also excited to introduce you to Meri Gregg of Avon Group. She's a senior project manager with them. Just recently got connected to Meri, but our team works with Meri on the Luxottica account, and just really excited to have you here, Meri. Thanks for being on the podcast. And maybe before we get into performance breakthroughs, could you share with us your entry into this industry and what you do at Avon and what Avon's all about, please?
Yeah, good morning. So I've been in the industry for about 21 years now. And when I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life when I was in high school, I kind of narrowed it down to three things. I either wanted to go into dentistry. I loved teeth.
Wow. Okay.
I wanted to go into accounting or something with numbers because I love numbers, or I wanted to do interior design because I figured that would be more fun than just numbers. The teeth I kind of ruled out. I was like, I like nice teeth. I don't like bad teeth. And then the accounting, like I said, interior design kind of just seemed a little more fun. I liked it more for the spatial planning, kind of viewed it as a puzzle, and I love puzzles. So then it was kind of like, where do you want to go to school? And someone said, like, do you want architecture? And at the time I said, no, I don't ever want to own my firm, like I own my own firm. So why would I do the extra work? Let me go this route. So I went to school. I enjoyed the more technical side of design than the freestyle side. And actually, when I was a senior, I had a mentor at the time, and we had to obtain a fake interview. And she got me an interview. At that time, it was GNC headquarters. She got me my fake interview, and I went in, and at the end of the interview, they're like, when can you start? I was like, oh, I'm still in school. I was like, this is when I'm out. Will you hold it for me? I got in immediately into the retail world as I was like a planner, store planner for GNC. And I did that for a very small hiccup. I think it was 5 months. And then at the time I lived with my roommate that I knew through college, and she worked at an architectural firm. And she kept trying, saying, why don't you come over? Why don't we come over? We have a retail team. And I was like, no, we live together. We don't need to work together too, And luck would have it, the guy that I sat next to shows up one day and is like, you should check out this job posting. And here it was my roommate's workplace.
Wow.
And he goes, there's 2 openings. Let's apply. So I ended up applying. Ernie would have it. That gentleman did not get the job. Myself and the other person he told to apply got the job, which was kind of funny because it's like, why would you tell 2 other people to apply for 2 positions when there's 3 of us? But then that firm got into retail, and I loved it. Like my brain is just a very fast-paced brain. I loved just the quickness of retail, and I loved learning and seeing a full project from start to finish kind of very quickly. I mean, retail, you'll turn over, projects in 6 months, start to finish. So if it's a headache, it's done quick. If it's great, also done quick. I've literally just pretty much have done retail almost my whole career. 8 years ago, right after I had my second child, I switched firms, and that's where I am now at Avon Design Group. And at the time when I switched, that firm did not do retail. So I got to experience ground up buildings and being project manager on those types of jobs, which was also huge in just learning what I know now. And then when retail kind of came back into my life with Luxottica, I've been able to apply what I learned for those 2 years outside of just the retail world, but then also leaning on my other years of experience. So that's kind of where I am now. I do genuinely like what I do. And yeah.
That's amazing. It's funny how that person invited two other people to apply for the job.
It is. And the funny thing is that the other person that applied, that was my mentor. We're really good friends. And then we got to work together for 11 years side by side, which was also great. So
And with your roommate as well.
no. The roommate worked upstairs. The mentor and I are the ones that jumped ship.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about Avon Design. You're located in Pittsburgh, but I'm assuming you do work everywhere. But tell us a little bit about what
We do.
Avon does.
Yeah, so Avon Design Group is actually, they specialize in like performance architecture. We are a smaller firm. We are 11 people, but there's the sector of the office that works on commercial. They'll do businesses, churches, family housing. I mean, literally, you name it. We're not just one sector. They do pretty much anything that comes across their plate. My boss is also specialized in water parks, which is kind of a neat aspect too. And then the odds and ends. Sometimes I feel like our firm gets called for the hard things that other people can't always do or figure out. So we'll
Yeah.
get the odd, the just odd things. So I would say our firm now is kind of split. I would say 70% does the commercial side and then 30% does the retail side. And then I run the retail side and sometimes hear what's going on the other side.
Well, you have a big breadth of experience in retail. You've seen lots of things over the years and have lots of experience, Mary. But part of the reason we have this podcast is to sort of explore and kind of get grassroots on the street impact of when performance works on a project. And just what's your insights when you see a project that's performing well and is maintaining budget, maintaining schedule, the relationships are good. What are the secret ingredients that you see in and through a project while it's working well?
A process. Like there is definitely a process no matter what client you are. There's steps that should be taken and people that need to get along to make those steps happen too. So I'm a firm believer of forms and reference files. And even if the form might not fit the project perfectly, most questions are going to apply. So as far as success kind of starts with real estate. If you can have real estate communicate clearly to you what they're negotiating into a deal, what they're asking for, and that conversation can kind of be upfront before they sign a deal, then we can kind of get involved and you can look at a few things together. If they're negotiating a possession date, we can try to help figure out if this is the possession date, how do we back it up? How much time do we have? Is it possible? And what is our timeline kind of right from the get-go? Is it doable and where are our hardships going to be? Now, some of that, what makes that successful, over time, I've developed two forms. One is we call it the code search form, and that's what we use to communicate with building departments to try to understand all the ins and outs of what we are going to have to do to get a permit and open the store. And then the other form is like a landlord form or an owner form. And it kind of gives some guidelines to ask the owner as in building owner that we're going to rent from, what they require and what are their timelines and what are some of their stipulations. And then you kind of can marry the two together to start to set up a schedule. Like I know as far as like our team, what it takes to do a drawing set and put together construction drawings, but then there's a lot of things out of our control. Like how long is the landlord going to take? What do they need? What are their processes? What are their steps? Is there a historic district? Is there, zoning applications? Like, are we doing something on the exterior? And then we can go into the building department side. And what do we have to do to submit? Does someone have to walk it in? Is it an online submission? Do we have to be there in person? Try to get all that up front that we can plan from the get-go, not as we go. So I find success is definitely when you can follow your process and your proper steps of things.
The valuing almost pre-construction, but pre-planning, pre-design, right? To get all the ducks in a row.
Yeah. And there's a little bit like, obviously, if you're starting a negotiation, is the negotiation going to fall through? You don't know. So there is a trust aspect with like our teams and the clients. Like, hey, can you get us some of this upfront information so we can make sure if this deal can turn into something?
It's where we find we need to invest time consistently. The more time we have to invest in that front end, it pays big dividends as the project moves forward.
It really does.
And then so we get the project lined up. We've done that work, and now the real estate's been secure. What kind of breakthroughs do you see in performance going forward from there once green lights have been given for you to actually do the design and get things rolling?
Yeah, so I find all clients are different. I've helped in different aspects with different clients. Some clients, if they don't have it internally, we know their kind of parameters on what they want. And then we will like test fit the space, lay out the space, make sure they like it. And then I've worked with clients that they have their own design teams and they figure it out to even hand it to you. If it's the latter where they're figuring out and handing it to us, it's most successful when they actually know what they want and can actually give it to us without, TBDs or stuff fluidly changing. Those tend to be the most successful because sometimes like we'll get a kickoff, like just for example, I got a kickoff yesterday and opened it up and I'm like, okay, we're ready to go. And then I was like, oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? And then it just, is a slew of questions back to try to, and we really can't get started 100% when we have 15 questions. I mean, in retail, you have to kind of keep moving just because it's so fast paced. But if you really don't want problems, it would be nice to kind of just really know what the design wants.
And start with the end in mind, right? That's the key. What's your position on as-built versus site assessments versus doing site measurements yourself? How have you maneuvered through that to increase performance?
Yeah. So, well, to be clear, myself, I prefer to hire a survey company because that's their specialty. I don't think you necessarily want me surveying. I can take pictures and check some measurements, but I'm not surveyor. I actually really like surveys. I think they're useful versus as-built, but I can see the value on both sides. Like if you don't want to put the money up, but then you've got to be okay with a few change orders. If you want to go with as-builts, I think it would also kind of be case specific. Maybe how old are the as-builts too? But surveys are amazing nowadays. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with like the Matterport files and the 3D walkthroughs. I mean, it's like you're there. I mean, other than being able to physically pick something up and move it to see what's behind it, you can zoom in, you can see the quality of like a ceiling finish if there's issues. So there's a huge value to, I think, efficiency to send survey teams to get as-built information and gather it. There's obviously still hiccups. Like if there's a hard lid ceiling with one or two access points, you're not seeing above it. And then you have to rely on as-built and hope for the best. You're not seeing behind a wall if an as-built doesn't tell you there's a column and or if you don't have base building plans and they open up a wall and there's a column, there's obviously some still restraints with just grabbing as-built information. But I value the survey portion, and I think it helps our teams be more efficient because it keeps us in the office. That survey team's the one out in the field grabbing the information, and then we can kind of keep rolling.
It's amazing. We've seen these surveys. It's phenomenal how technology has improved the quality of them. And it is, as you say, it's like you're walking the space yourself.
We've been challenging our survey team to get 360s above the ceiling so you can move around above the ceiling. So they've gotten some successfully, but it's not a global thing that we can do everywhere.
Yeah, it is fascinating to see them when they can capture them.
Yeah. Yeah. So there definitely is a huge value. But, if time didn't allow, you can work off as-built, but there just, again, it has to be an understanding that there have been changes in the last 7-10 years, whenever, depending on when the space was built.
How do you work through the coordination of MEPs with architectural to make sure they're aligned? What's your process to make sure that's done efficiently and effectively so when it gets to the contractor and it gets to the field that the conflict as much as possible? What do you do to increase performance?
So I have a few things. So one thing I'm a firm believer, especially if your type of retail is a rollout in a sense, is a reference file. And what that does is that creates a starting point for our teams, AOR, EOR. And it basically encompasses what the client wants. And it can be a living document that if there's something that changes in a field or an issue, you bring it back immediately and change it. So as far as coordinating with the EORs, our EORs have our starting point. They have our reference files. We get design decks from the client, and that kind of starts to like map out the scope of work of what they budgeted for. Are they anticipating new, HVAC? If they know what's coming in on the lease from the electrical side, or, they'll start to tell us what they can. Now, internally, what we do to cross coordinate, I actually have just recently started a checklist, meaning when our team hands off the project for them to start, we will go through and tell them certain things like, do I have full height walls? What's the deck type? What's my deck height? What do I know, if I know anything from the lease that I can share with them? Will the landlord allow a supplemental unit? We have like these kind of standard questions that we'll fill out to give to them. Then what we do is they do their portion and send it back, and then I'll do an internal check on it. And then during that internal check, if there's questions, we'll jump on the phone and say, hey, I've got this situation. You're showing me this. What do we have to do to make it work? And it works. I mean, it's a fast pace. Of course, I think my one wish all of the time is just maybe one extra week, to have more time to just make sure everything's right. But we catch quite a lot in the time we do have. So
I know on our team, we really encourage, we call it bleeding over the drawings. You just need to block off some time and make sure the conflicts are identified and clarified. And, it takes some time, but it does bear fruit. And once it,
yeah. I'm like, I know enough to be dangerous because I'll give them, quite a few red lines, but it's good to go back and forth. And then actually I'm about to start implementing them giving us a checklist when they send it back to us. So stuff that I've been seeing wrong, like over and over again, we're trying to start to putting a checklist to say, hey, why don't you check this before you send it back to us to make sure we're aligned. So
cool. That's cool. Now, drawings are done. We now have the permit. We're now on site building the store. Have you got any thoughts or thinking on performance breakthroughs from there out for you that you see when it's really working well between the owner, your team, the engineering team, and the contractor and the owner's rep? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I've found this kind of across the board, no matter what client I work for. Once it hit construction, while they do want us involved, we're not heavily involved. And that's when their construction and PMs kind of take over. I mean, we'll get RFIs. Sometimes you'll hear nothing. Sometimes we'll be on a weekly call. This one's kind of hard too, because obviously we're not feet on the ground. In the last 2 years, Luxottica started having the architectural teams travel, and it has been extremely useful. They've started to have us just come at punch. The only problem with us coming at punch is it's a little too late to change something big. If we notice something missed when they're trying to turn the space in 2 business days, we're not fixing any big items. We're just either pointing them out or commenting on small stuff. So this has actually, I think, been like an internal discussion. How can it be more efficient? I actually had just suggested the other day, there's certain things like after framing, could we have a touch base with the GC to say, did you get all our measurements? Like, can we do a quick page turn? Did you get that? Once you rough in all your outlets and data and, can we, again, comb through our dimensioning plan and make sure we're all aligned? None of that's implemented yet. We don't drive that portion of the project. We're more in response mode than anything. So I think a lot could help if we can figure out more there, but their timelines are so tight. I get it. There's not always a lot of time to say, hey, let's have a, 30-minute call.
Yeah.
But if we could kind of figure out how to get some stop points scheduled in, I think it would help.
So you've set me up good for this next part, which is when you haven't seen projects work effectively and efficiently, what are some common themes that you've experienced? Maybe you've got an example of a project that didn't go well, but maybe more globally. What do you see as the friction points when things aren't going well?
So I think it really comes down to collaboration and communication. I find when projects don't go the best, there's a lack in the communication from somebody in the process, whether it's real estate or a designer or a contractor. Normally, when there's something that hasn't gone well, one of those entities has not communicated. Now, we do our best as far as like our internal teams to like cross our T's, dot our I's. We know the codes. We've looked up what things take. So I really find most of the time when something doesn't go successful is communication broke down somewhere along the way.
Communication is key, trying to figure out the best way depending on the team. We've found over the years that different teams communicate differently, and trying to understand which way of communicating is the best way to apply to that project or that client. Even in a client, you could have different communication styles that one person needs it this way and another person needs it that way.
Yeah. And one thing I learned along the way, I think one of my mentors, they said, you don't get your team to like morph to your ways. You have to kind of learn everyone's style and you figure out how to make them work to their best capacity. So, and that, whether that's a team member or, a client, it's the same mentality. How do they work? How can we get this to work with how we need it to work? So,
Keeping that end in mind, we use the line often, we need to be nimble and adaptable.
yes, always
Right?
adaptable.
Yeah. How do we pivot? How do we adapt the situation that we have in front of us?
Yeah. I joke with some coworkers. I'm like, I need a sign that says, why am I surprised? Because I'm pretty sure almost every like 3 days, it's like, what?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So,
How did that happen?
yeah. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier that you're trying to get these touch points in the construction cycle for you to see the status of when the framing's done, once the electrical roughing is done. As you look ahead in the retail construction world, what do you think we should be paying attention to, or anything that you feel we should be having our eye
Well,
on?
I think we need to be cautious with AI. As much as it's a very useful tool, it doesn't know everything. I think one thing to be cautious of in this world of we want it faster, we want it quicker, we want it cheaper. I think one thing people just need to be aware of is like there are certain things you just can't speed up. You will sacrifice quality, you will sacrifice money. And I think if people could be cautious is yes, you might want it faster, you might want it quicker. You have to give the teams, whether it's our team or the GCs, you have to give them the proper amount of time to complete a project. If not, you create burnout. Yes, teams can pull off that one-off amazing fast schedule. It's really hard to say you're going to do that all the time. So I think as far as like going forward, don't think you can just keep squashing the time. Just, framing takes time, roughings take time, drawings take time, proper coordination takes time. You start to take off time on the drawings. What are you sacrificing? Coordination with your MEPs, your quality checks. So it's just to be mindful of, yes, the teams can pull it off, but something is being sacrificed to make it move faster.
Yeah, I just listened to a podcast with Brené Brown, and she was talking about we sacrifice time now. We will pay for it down the street. How do we
Yeah.
manage?
I find one of the biggest issues, at least with, the teams I work with, is we have certain touch bases and basically you can kind of call one a 90%. And I find one of the biggest things is they're like, we have to save time. We must bid out the 90%, permit the 90%. And I find anytime that's done, there are change orders. I'll show up on site because they bid the 90%. I think this is actually probably one of my biggest pet peeves. And they're working off of that set when there's been like 3 revisions. It's like, what happened? But I think what happens is the GC takes a set, distributes this to the subs. The subs bid off that set, and that's what they walk in with. And it just hurts overall.
The issued for construction site, that site is very important.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I walked in at a punch once and laid out, it was like, not for bidder construction. I'm like, what's this? And yeah.
Well, we all have those stories that we can tell, right? That when things go off rail. Well, thank you, Meri, for coming on the podcast. Appreciate your insights and wisdom. And if anyone that's listening wants to reach you, what's the best way to do that?
You can reach me through LinkedIn and then we can connect, whether phone or email is the best form of communication.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Meri. For those that are listening, thank you for listening. Behind the Barricades brought to you by Cornerstone, where we're really dedicated to creating a better journey for our clients, our staff, our project partners like Avon, and ultimately the world. So thanks, Meri, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
What a great conversation with Meri. A couple of things I want you to take away from this one. First, Meri talked about the power of process. She built 2 simple forms, a code search form and a land letter form, that let her team get critical information before a lease is even signed. That's not glamorous work. Nobody's posting about forms on LinkedIn. But that upfront discipline is what separates a smooth project from one that's fighting fires from day one. And I think that's a lesson all of us can apply, no matter what side of the project we sit on. Second, she said something that really resonated with me. You can't just keep squashing the timelines. Teams can pull off that one miracle schedule, but you can't ask them to do it every time without sacrificing quality or coordination or burning people out. That's a conversation our whole industry needs to be having more honestly. And then there was that piece of advice from her mentor she shared. You don't force your team to work your way. You learn how they work and how to bring out the best in them. And that applies to teammates, our clients, all our project partners. And that's what we call leadership. If this episode gave you something useful, something you can take back to the next project or your next team meeting, I'd really appreciate it if you could take 30 seconds and leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. It's a small thing, but it makes a real difference in helping others in our industry find these conversations. And that's the whole point of Behind the Barricade, getting these insights out to the people who can use them. This is Behind the Barricade, brought to you by Cornerstone, where we're dedicated to creating a better journey for our clients, our staff, our project partners, and ultimately the world. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.